Hello, everyone. You're in for a wonderful time. This is the Impact Forum. My name is Emmanuel Adebola, and you're welcome to another episode that promises to be very exciting because the gentleman beside me has been difficult to catch, first of all, but his story is really inspiring, and I'm pleased to welcome to this episode Chazz Okparanta. How are you?
I'm well. I'm alive.
I hope you're enjoying the weather.
I'm trying.
It's summer here, so we're having a short spell before the winter comes in.
Longer than short.
Yes.
Short is too short.
So you have an interesting story that I think people need to hear. You're an immigrant, first generation immigrant to Canada.
Yeah.
You came in and you literally just walked what seems like a very short learning curve, and you're firing on all cylinders. Tell us about it, especially because you're operating in the financial industry.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it was a short or easy or fluid ascent, as maybe it might appear publicly. But anyway, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And yes, it has been a bit of a mission to connect. But I guess when we talk about my journey, what connects my journey, my work, and my community involvement is one idea, and that is that trust compounds. So I've tried to build a business that protects people, creates opportunity, and I guess reinvests in the communities that made my business's growth possible. So, that's what I've done. That's my strategy, and that's how I've gotten where I've gotten.
All right. The typical story for many of us is that you come in on a high, fall down, and literally pick yourself back up. Did you have that? Because for some people, they literally hit the ground running and it's all boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that's been in business who hasn't had, the highs and the lows.
Yeah.
And that's what business is about. And that's what the journey from immigrating to a different country and learning different things, different societal norms, maybe you would say, or different rules of the game. So, yes, I can talk forever about the highs and the lows. That's a typical standard thing with pretty much anyone that's run or operated or started a business.
Okay. So you operate in the financial service industry. Have you always done that, like back home in Africa where you came from, or was that a decision that happened when you came to Canada?
Well, I have many citizens. I'm non-traditional when it comes to citizenship. So while I'm a Nigerian citizen, I did not live in Nigeria, certainly not as an adult. I've been there, to visit for many years, but I lived in many countries. I lived in the UK. I lived in the US. I lived I've lived in Canada now. To name a few.
You're tempted to make me ask where's next.
Well, I've got a family here, so I think this is the final hurrah. I think. But as any immigrant, I immigrated to Canada in 2012, and I immigrated here with ambition, but I still had to build a Canadian network and a local track record. And I guess the confidence of people who did not know me yet. So I learned quickly that, technical knowledge may get you, licensed, but trust is what earns you a career. So I focused on doing the small things exceptionally well.
I see.
I listened carefully. I explained complex decisions, I think, in plain language, and I followed through. So I stayed close to that community that was instrumental in my success. So, I can continue, that community rooted approach is what, changed the trajectory of my business. So since 2016, where I built Chazz Financial around what I would call a simple promise. And that promise was protect what people have built, help them grow that responsibly, and be present when the plan is tested, which ultimately all plans get tested. So I also kept investing in incompetence through, all of my designations, the FCSI, CLU, CHS,
Okay.
chartered financial planner designations, but I mean, again, not to be long-winded, which I can be, the credentials only matter when they improve judgment
Yes.
and client outcomes. So today I lead an insurance and wealth management agency that I would say it services clients in Ontario and Alberta, and I'm really grateful for all the awards, all the recognitions, but I don't define success by the plaques. I define it, by families that are more secure, businesses that can survive disruption, and people whose careers have been helped.
Yeah.
And then the communities that we reinvest in. So,
Amazing.
yes.
Fantastic.
My journey was not an overnight breakthrough. It was credibility compounded through consistency.
That's well put.
Yes.
All right. So how do you decide financial services was the right platform for you?
Okay. So, I get that question often, and it's a great question because I have worked in a great many other industries.
Okay.
I worked in television.
Oh, really?
I made shows.
So you've been on this side before?
Yes, I made shows for travels. Well, I wasn't on the front end of TV,
Okay.
but I did more of the financial management part of it. But I did not choose financial services because insurance looked great. I chose it because the consequences are real. I think a family can spend 20 years building stability, and one death, a disability, an illness, fire, lawsuit, or even like we see what's happening now, a market shock, can erase years of progress. A business can be profitable and still be fragile because nobody planned for the loss of a key person, a succession event, a liability claim, or the tax cost of transferring wealth from yourself, for example, to your children. So that's where financial services became meaningful to me. It sits at the intersection of people, business, mathematics, and trust. So it gives you the ability to turn uncertainty into a plan, and it's also matched how I naturally think and how I naturally work. I like to listen before prescribing. So I like to simplify complex decisions. I don't know if you've ever seen any of my videos online, but
I have seen a number of them.
yes. So I like relationships that deepen over time or over years, and rather than what we see a lot of now, which is transactions that end when a policy is issued. So the longer I've worked in the industry, the clearer my philosophy has become. Protection and wealth cannot be separate conversations. First, protect income, then build wealth, then plan how that wealth will move to the next generation, a business successor or a charity. And that I think that integrated view is why financial services became more than a career for me. It became the platform which I could use to create measurable security for my clients and frankly for myself.
Good stuff. I imagine this is not the first time you've been asked this question, and that is, what do you tell people is the best time to actually begin to take on the financial, the insurance?
Okay, so are you talking about all insurances, or I mean?
I'll talk more about life insurance. I think life insurance is the one that.
Okay, so I mean, insurance is first a risk mitigation tool, right? So its primary purpose is to transfer financial risk that a family or a business cannot comfortably absorb, right? So that could be the loss of income, a mortgage, a business loan, a tax liability, a key employee, or the cost of an estate. So once the protection need is clear, certain forms of permanent insurance can support broader financial strategy. So there is no perfect time for someone to get life insurance. A lot of people say, I'm gonna I'm going to wait till I'm ready. I'm
Yeah.
going to have some
Yeah.
kids. I'm going to,
Yeah.
let me buy a house. Let me do this. But the reality is that life doesn't wait for you
No,
to
it
make
doesn't.
those sorts
Yeah.
of decisions.
Yeah.
You have to always think in terms of right now I'm able to. So the best time to answer your question very directly and succinctly is that the best time to arrange life insurance specifically is before the need becomes urgent and while you are still healthy enough to have choices.
Yeah.
Right? The real trigger is not a birthday, it's responsibility. If someone depends on you or your income, if you have children, a spouse, a mortgage, personal or business debt, a company, a partner, a key employee, or an estate that could create a tax liability at death, liquidity or even equalization issues, it's time to review the need. So waiting has two costs. Premiums generally rise as you get older, and changes in health can reduce the options or make coverage unavailable. So you don't have control when insurability changes. So my advice is to start with a policy you can sustain. It may not be ideal or an ideal plan, but you keep repositioning yourself as time goes on with new reviews.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think it was yesterday or the day before, I did watch one of your podcasts where we were talking about the importance of health.
Sure.
It becomes a problem later on if you don't take advantage of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Life insurance is not a purchase that you make once and forget it.
Yeah.
It's a living part of a financial plan.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at it.
Yeah. You've already started addressing this, but my next question is that how should we view insurance? Is it as a risk mitigation strategy or a financial investment strategy? Because it looks like,
Yeah, it's both.
No.
All right. I mean, in anything that you do, risk is a part of it, right? And determining your risk tolerance and whether, whatever your goals are for the end point or the end game is how you determine whether, hey, can I control or absorb that damage? And that's all insurance is. A lot of people will say, I pay all this money for insurance and I get nothing for it. But the reality is that's what you're paying for. You're hoping that you don't have to deal with something. In Ontario, and I won't go too much into detail on product because of, I'm a regulated individual. So there are things I shouldn't talk about unless I'm actively contracted to advise you. But, people will say to me often, well, I didn't have a claim specifically for auto insurance, for example. Well, I never had a claim, so I shouldn't have an increase. But in many provinces and certainly in the States, insurance is a shared, it's a shared structure, right?
Yeah.
So meaning if we as individuals were to absorb the entire increase of impact on a premium rating by ourselves for damage that we cause ourselves, we would not be able to afford insurance. The point of why we share risk in many provinces is because, one claim could be $1 million claim.
Yeah.
How would you manage that? Right? You transfer the risk to an insurer who says, if and when an issue occurs, we will take on the financial responsibility for you. So, it's both things. It's risk mitigation, but it's also about financial planning on the long term when you look at the life and the health and the wealth planning. We're all going to die, right? So the question becomes, what happens to the people I love when that happens, right?
Right. Amazing. So let's take a break away from the financial service industry where you're clearly doing well. The first time I met you was not in the tax office, was doing a community involvement. I think it was TINFF, Toronto Film Festival. And I was very impressed with how you committed to it and, you shared so much passion on the day. Tell us a little bit about how are you able to, leverage the platform you have to support different community initiatives?
I think the question you're going for is how do I choose the community initiatives that I support? And yes, that includes the Toronto International Nollywood Film Festival. And I've had this question many a times, and the question ultimately is the decision driven by relationships or is it driven by
Value.
value?
The value,
Right.
yeah.
Right. So, relationships can open the door, but values and impact decide whether we walk through it. So governance and results they decide whether we stay.
Okay.
Right. So I believe in reciprocity. That's the first thing. So when people and organizations support my business or our business, they refer clients, they help our team grow. I believe in supporting them.
Yeah.
So, that's the primary thing. But there, that said, a relationship alone is not enough to justify a sponsorship.
Okay.
So I look for alignment with the issues that matter to me. So children, education, health, culture, inclusion is a big one. Business and economic opportunity. Those are all things I think about. And then, I look at execution. Is the leadership of this organization credible?
Okay.
Is the organization creating access and measurable opportunity? Will my contribution build long-term capacity or simply place our logo on an event? Right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned TIMF.
Yes.
TIMF is a strong example. It gives underrepresented stories a platform, and it has grown into an ecosystem that supports filmmakers, youth, business people, emerging creatives. And you may know this, and I now serve as chair of its advisory board.
Oh, I see.
In 2025, Chazz Financial, in partnership with cooperators, contributed $30,000 to support arts, culture, and representation. So,
Amazing.
For me, that is.
I hope the budget is not used up for 2026.
Well, again, I don't have a strict budget in that way, but it's all based on strategic alignment.
Okay.
So anyway, for me, that is strategic community investment. It's not. I don't look at it as charity,
Yeah.
or as public relations. I think that strong communities create strong businesses, and successful businesses should reinvest in people and institutions that made their growth possible in the first place. So the short answer is relationships and value, but always filtered through purpose, credibility, and impact. Financial success matters, but I think its real value is what it allows you to protect, build, and give back. And that is the business and the legacy that I'm trying to build.
Amazing. So as we begin to round up, Chazz Financial started 10 years ago, from what you just said now, 2016 to 2026. Sure. What are your top 2 or 3 lessons on this journey? You've talked about trust, you've talked about building community, but what would you rather not do if you were to start all over again?
That's a loaded question. I certainly would not want to start all over again. But there's lots that has been learned in the journey. And a lot of everything that I've learned in my life boils down to a very simple principle. Over the last year and a half, for those who have followed me on social media, you will notice that very counterintuitive to what most business people do is that sometimes I'm very open and vocal about my dislike for certain political agendas and certain. And the reality is that I think that in the old days, people sat on their laurels and said things like, "Well, I don't follow politics," or I'm in business. I don't want it to affect the people I'm dealing with. And one of the things that I've learned in my life is that good business is about having relationships with good people.
Yeah.
If you may find someone who's very wealthy and you feel committing a partnership with them might lead me to greener pastures. But the reality is that bad people end up doing bad things. And partnerships and and working with bad people ends up being litigious to a point that you will ultimately never be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I am, when I look at the way I am and the way I project and the brand that I try to create publicly as a business person, that is the core functionality is I will be someone who follows what I believe from an integrity perspective. And if that involves being public and saying that this is wrong, killing children is wrong, and throwing people into unmarked vehicles is not okay, and targeting citizens who are not of a certain race is not okay. If saying those things publicly because I'm a businessman means that some people do not want to work with me, then I absolutely welcome that. I don't, because I don't want to work with you. Right? And so, I learned a lot of things in business, and a lot of people told me those things that are very typical of what they tell a businessman to do. But if I was to go back, I would do what I do now. And I would be the person that I am now.
So obviously it's paying off for you,
Well,
and you've been authentic in any case to who you are.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, I know there's still a lot ahead of you, and we can only wish you the best. We appreciate what you do, particularly within the Black community. Seeing people like you stand out, be bold, make impact is very encouraging, and I'm sure that people are watching you even beyond the many followers that you currently have. And at ANA Global, where I lead, we've had the privilege of seeing you and celebrating what you do, and we can only wish you the best.
Thank you so much. I
All
appreciate
right.
it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for joining us today, and I'm sure you will enjoy this. This is the one you watch again and again until you understand. Bye for now.
Cheers.